So this was a second white paper that was put together by a consortium of academic, industry, government, and other foundations that was designed to look at the use of measurable residual disease, or MRD, in myeloma as a guide to clinical management, and to provide both background into its current status, as well as the technologies involved, the regulatory considerations, and even case studies where the use of measurable residual disease can be directly incorporated as part of the overall consideration of how to manage a patient. So there were sections that, again, were written by academics. There were sections that were written by representatives of the Food and Drug Administration in the US. And there were sections that were written by biotech and pharma. You know, as is underscored in this current IMW meeting, MRD is beginning to be recognized as a tool that can be provide more and more insight into a patient's clinical status, response to therapy, and tumor burden over time. These are critical considerations now, and in particular in myeloma. 15 or 20 years ago, you know, having a highly accurate, standardized, and sensitive method of monitoring residual disease would have been viewed by a number of myeloma physicians as a luxury. They would say, you know, I should be so lucky as to have to worry about whether after induction therapy my patient has, or, you know, 1 in a million residual cells left in their bone marrow, okay? But as actually due to the efforts of many of the people who are attending this meeting, the number of drugs that have now been approved over the past decade for the treatment of patients with myeloma has been really amazing. And it's not just the approvals, but it has led to a change in the expected outcome for patients with myeloma that is really one of the current success stories where, 10 or 15 years ago, progression-free survival was measured in months, and now clearly it's measured in years. Given that, and given all of these new therapies, which are directed at many, many different targets and which use a variety of methods on their own, it is absolutely essential to have a highly accurate, standardized, and sensitive way now of measuring disease and of measuring a response to therapy. For the past 5 years, if you go to a number of professional society meetings, you will hear, and actually there was even one at this meeting, counterpoint is MRD ready for prime time. There's no question. Not only is it ready for prime time, in many cases, it is actively being incorporated routinely into the clinical management of patients with myeloma. Now, that doesn't mean that clinical trials are no longer important. Clinical trials are absolutely important, and that's how new drugs are evaluated and get developed, et cetera. But a clinical trial, you can have both. They're not mutually exclusive. You can have a clinical trial in order to look at the best time point for measuring MRD, or how to incorporate MRD into maintenance, or what new drug regimen or combination is the most efficacious. But at the same time, there can be a patient sitting in front of you who needs guidance as to how to proceed in his or her course of therapy today, not 2 years from now when there will be the results of another clinical trial. So MRD is a way of both, it's a tool that is used in drug development and in clinical management as per clinical trial questions, but today it is also a tool that is directly relevant to the real-time care of a patient with myeloma. And there have actually even been papers published within the past couple of years of real-world experience from major medical institutions using MRD in order to direct patient care.